Aloha and welcome to Hawaii Tropical Botanical Gardens, Conversations in the Garden. Today we'll be answering some questions from our viewers with Brayden, one of our gardeners. We will be discussing differences between heliconias and gingers, canoe plants in the garden, and of course, our state flower, the hibiscus. Join us in today's episode of Conversations in the Garden, Other Plants in the Garden.
Hello everyone, I'm Alexis.
And I'm Brayden, and today we've compiled some most commonly asked questions about some plants in the garden.
We've compiled questions from our social media channels like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and also from our guests who visit the garden.
And today we're going to be answering your most commonly asked questions.
So the first question we have is, what is the difference between heliconias and gingers?
So a big difference is you can even just tell with the leaves off the bat. So gingers are going to tend to be a bit smaller, and they almost have a ladder-shaped leaves coming out, or not the leaves themselves, but it's a alternating pattern on each side of the stalk. They tend to be a bit narrower, while with your heliconia, they're these broad paddle-like leaves, like similar to banana leaves, because they do share a genealogy there. And also some misconceptions with the flowers there is Heliconia and ginger have very different flowers. Ginger will tend to form in a ball, or like a kind of a spiky bract pattern, while the heliconia are going to be a bit more symmetrical with either a hanging or upright flower with the bracts coming off of the sides of them there. And also some important things to keep in mind with them is that they both come from rhizomes there. So while they're similar, the heliconia rhizome is going to tend to stay a bit more in its own area, while a ginger, they do come from rhizomes, but they tend to walk. So what that means is, as the bracts start to get pollinated, new ginger are going to form out of them themselves, which means that that flower is going to get heavy, way down, and now you've got a whole nother clump of ginger growing as soon as it touches the ground pretty much there. So they tend to be quite a bit more aggressive, the ginger, than the heliconia, which is a big reason why ginger tend to be used for harvesting, like the rhizomes for spices, while heliconia tend to keep to themselves as an ornamental or barrier plant because the less aggressive nature of the plants there.
And now that we know a little bit more about the two plants, what are some common misconceptions between the two?
So, as we did mention with the ginger, a misconception with them is that there's so many different varieties that you can just harvest the rhizomes of any of them. In fact, there's very few ginger that we actually use in culinary practice there. So the big one is the Zingiber officinal, which is pretty much what most of your spices are going to be used with. But most of them, you're not going to be very pleased if you start taking bites and shaving off pieces of them there. Yeah.
And what of the heliconia?
A lot of people may think that heliconia are bad because they'll bring insects or with all the standing water in their flower or in the bracts there. But actually they're most commonly pollinated by birds, which is one. So if you're planting ginger around, most of their pollinators are insects. You might have a bit more of those on your property. But with the heliconia, you're going to be getting a lot more birds because they'll use that standing water as kind of drinking pools. The heliconia, actually, many of them do produce berries, and the birds will eat that and transfer that around. So heliconia aren't quite as much of a pest attractor as a lot of people may think.
Okay, and so the next question we have is, are there native plants in the garden?
Oh, absolutely. We have both canoe plants and endemic plants. And the big difference with those, for those who don't know, is canoe plants were brought here by Polynesian voyagers traveling all throughout. And so a lot of those ones are going to be more for food, like breadfruit, quick producing crops, the sweet potato, taro, kalo, things like that. While the endemic plants are things thought to have originated in Hawaii, so they were out here before even the voyagers came. So the hapu'u is a big one, mamaki were here, and these ones really cement themselves in Hawaiian culture. Like mamaki is used for many medicinal practices. The hapu'u, they has this kind of almost like velvet like casting around the new growth, which is very commonly used to address wounds or even fill up pillows type of thing there. And another one is our cordyline or our tea plants here. So those were brought here, they're a canoe plant, and they actually have a protective feature. It's very culturally significant, where you'll find it's planted off on the borders of property. It's supposed to be protection from spirits and just keep your place safe in general. So that's a very common thing you'll find as you come out here, is that cordyline or tea plants are very commonly used to line properties to make safe spaces there. And the taro, of course, that was one of the one of those famous Polynesian canoe plants there. It's fed them. It's fed the people for countless generations. We can't even track it really. And absolute staple crop. It only takes about 6 to 12 months until you can harvest the potato underneath there. So that's why it's very common all throughout the islands here. But perhaps the most famous of them all, this is actually an endemic plant. It's the hibiscus there, and it's the yellow state flower there. And so it wasn't always a state flower. Back in like late 80s they had changed it over, but it was such a beautiful, like impactful flower, and to see it growing wild out here, and it was just spoke to many people there, and it's now one of the symbols of Hawaii themselves there.
So you mentioned the Ma'o Hauhele, Hawaii state flower. Hawaii is known for many varieties of hibiscus. What are some types of hibiscus that can be found in the garden?
So much of our hibiscus are tropical hibiscus. Big surprise, we're kind of in the tropics. They do very well out here. And what's very appealing about those ones is they only take 6 to 12 weeks from being a seed until they start to flower. And not to mention that once it's going, the flowers only last for about a day or two, but it will constantly be flowering all throughout there, which is why hibiscus are like, they're so beloved really by gardeners. It's one of my favorite plants, absolutely, just for the ease of it. It doesn't need a huge amount of maintenance. It needs water, of course, but like they'll tend to just really take off on their own. If you give them a good start, they'll produce just a show for you, like wherever you put them at. Really, they do very well out here in the tropics. And another thing that's with them is that there's hardy hibiscus. There's different types, but we prefer the tropical ones, again, because of our area. But you can still get very similar varieties pretty much wherever you're at there. The hardy hibiscus, it's actually native to southern United States area, so you can still grow them in a bit colder climates. They won't do well with freezing, but they still are just as hardy. The hardy hibiscus does need a bit more water. You want to keep the soil much more wet with them. But for some of our viewers back on the mainland there, this may be something that's more appealing to you, just because you can actually put them outside. You can have them in your garden beds. You don't have to move them around so much. Yeah, so the hardy hibiscus is much better for some colder climates there. And you also have some other ones there. One to consider is actually a swamp hibiscus, which doesn't sound great, but it actually has this beautiful pinwheel pattern on it, and it's quite a bit different than these ones. It's a unique variety that I don't see much of, especially out here, but you can grow that one in a bit more colder climates. Again, you don't want to put them out there to freeze by any means, but you can really get some great varieties other than just the tropical ones there. That still emanates their beauty and what we love about hibiscus.
So, for all that the hibiscus is known for, what do you think is the main reason it's such a popular flower around the States?
I would definitely say for the ease of cultivation there. Again, you can have a full-on flowering plant in just 12 weeks, which is a gardener's dream, really. The maintenance isn't super bad either way, and also just the flexibility with them. We all have different environments. Even on the islands here, you might be a higher elevation and you get some colder nights. Maybe you'll want to go look for more of a hardy hibiscus for those environments there. And it's just the growth of them quickly will change your landscape, and I believe that's definitely why that they're so prominent throughout here.
And what other fun facts can you share with us about the hibiscus?
Oh, fun facts there. So hummingbirds love them. that's absolutely fun thing. You'll have a lot more birds flying about, some interesting butterflies even. They're pollinated by so many different things, where they'll start to make a little bit of their own ecosystem just by starting to flower there. And also with the tropical hibiscus, you can have flowers up to 8 inches. Like this one isn't far off of it. I think that's pretty large, especially for something that grows so fast. You really get some shows out of them there, which I love about it. Absolutely there. But there's a lot of medicinal hibiscus as well. So not just the tropical, but there's the Mexican hibiscus, which is very well known for helps with blood pressure, it's one of those super plants really. So there's not just necessarily for flowering, but there's many medicinal practices that can be used with hibiscus there. So very flexible, versatile plant that makes it one of my favorites for sure.
Thank you so much, and that is all time we have for today. But I would like to give everyone a big mahalo for joining us on our first season of Conversations with the Garden.
Yeah, and thanks so much for following along with us, and we'll catch you on the next season.
Mahalo for joining us today for Conversations in the Garden, Other Plants of the Garden. If you have suggestions on what you would like to see next, please leave a comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel and follow us on social media. The link is in the description. Stay tuned for our next season.